How Woodstock became the defining moment of a generation. 4 weeks before Woodstock was supposed to happen, there was nowhere to hold it. The original site was a piece of industrial land in the town of Wallkill, New York. The 4 promoters, Michael Lang, Artie Kornfeld, John Roberts, and Joel Rosenman, had secured the location months earlier, begun constructing the stage and fencing, and had already sold close to 100,000 advance tickets at $7 a day, or $18 for the full 3-day weekend. Then, in late July 1969, the Wallkill Town Board passed a local ordinance that effectively banned the festival from taking place. The injunction was served with less than a month remaining. The stage was partially built, the performers were booked, the tickets were sold, and the site was gone. What the 4 promoters did in the next 2 weeks and what happened across 3 days in August on a dairy farm in the Catskill Mountains produced an event that has been written about, filmed, argued over, and mythologized for more than 50 years. Most of the mythology gets the details wrong. The reality is more interesting. Subscribe. Now, if you want more of this kind of history, the actual story behind the moments everyone thinks they know. New episodes every week. Michael Lang was 24 years old in the summer of 1969, and he was the closest thing the operation had to a visionary. He had promoted a smaller festival in Miami the previous year, had an instinct for the cultural moment, and he understood that what they were building was not simply a concert, but something larger. A gathering, a statement, a physical expression of a generation's sense of itself. His 3 partners brought the money and the business structure. Roberts and Rosenman were Yale-educated and had capital from a family inheritance. Kornfeld was a music industry professional who provided credibility with the record labels and management companies whose artists they were trying to book. Together, the 4 of them had assembled a lineup that was, by the standards of 1969, extraordinary. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Who, Jefferson Airplane, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Joan Baez, Sly, and the Family Stone, and 30 other acts across 3 days. After the Wallkill rejection, Lang found Max Yasgur. Yasgur was a 49-year-old dairy farmer in Bethel, New York, in Sullivan County, about 60 miles from the original site. He owned 600 acres of rolling farmland, including a natural bowl-shaped field that Lang immediately recognized as a performance space. Yasgur was not part of the counterculture. He was a conservative, hard-working farmer who had built a successful business and had no particular sympathy for the politics of the young people who wanted to use his land. But he believed in their right to gather, and he agreed to lease the field for a fee reported at various times between $50,000 and $75,000. His neighbors were furious. Local businesses put signs in their windows refusing service to festival attendees. Yasgur absorbed the hostility and held to the agreement. The promoters had planned for somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 people. Their upper estimate was already ambitious by the standards of any event staged to that point. What they got was approximately 400,000, and the infrastructure they had built was not close to adequate for that number. The access roads into Bethel turned into a traffic jam that extended for 20 miles in every direction by the afternoon of Friday, August the 15th, the festival's opening day. Cars were abandoned on the highway. People walked the last 10 or 15 miles on foot, carrying whatever they had brought with them. The New York State Thruway was effectively shut down in the surrounding area. Governor Nelson Rockefeller considered calling in the National Guard, and he was talked out of it, partly because the logistics of moving troops through the same gridlocked roads were impossible, and partly because the crowd, by every account, was peaceful. The fencing came down almost immediately. There were simply too many people for any ticketing system to function, and the decision was made within the first hours of the event to declare it a free festival. The promoters, Roberts and Rosenman in particular, understood in real time that they were watching a financial catastrophe unfold. The gate receipts that were supposed to cover costs evaporated the moment the fences went down. Woodstock Ventures, the company the four had formed to produce the event, would eventually carry debts estimated at over $1 million. That was a significant sum in 1969. Roberts and Rosenman paid those debts personally over the years that followed. The physical conditions on the site were, by objective measure, extremely difficult. Water pipes installed for the expected crowd failed under the actual demand. Food supplies ran short within the first day. Rain turned large sections of the field into mud. Medical facilities, designed for a much smaller crowd, were overwhelmed. The Army sent helicopters to assist with supply runs after the state declared the festival a disaster area in the formal administrative sense that unlocked emergency resources. 3 people died over the weekend, one from a ruptured appendix, one from a heroin overdose, and one young man who was asleep in a sleeping bag and was run over by a tractor. 2 births were reported, though the exact number has been disputed in various accounts over the years. The music against all of this was extraordinary. Richie Havens opened the festival on Friday afternoon. He was put on the stage ahead of schedule because several other acts were stuck in the traffic gridlock and had not arrived yet. He played everything he knew, stretching his set far beyond its intended length. When he had exhausted his prepared material, he began improvising, repeating the word freedom over a driving acoustic guitar rhythm until it became a full song, later released under that title. It was an accidental opening statement that turned out to be exactly right for the moment. Jefferson Airplane played as the sun rose on Saturday morning, having been delayed from their scheduled Friday slot. Sly and the Family Stone performed at 3 in the morning on Sunday and delivered what many eyewitnesses describe as the single most electrifying set of the weekend, the band operating at a level of collective intensity that matched the strangeness of the hour and the scale of the crowd. The Who went on after Sly and the Family Stone in the early hours of Sunday morning and played for 2 hours despite Pete Townshend's visible hostility to the event's disorganization. He famously knocked Abby Hoffman off the stage during their set when Hoffman attempted to make a political speech between songs. Jimi Hendrix closed the festival on Monday morning, August 18th. He had been scheduled as the closing act for Sunday night, but delays throughout the weekend had pushed everything back, and by the time he took the stage, it was around 9 in the morning. Most of the crowd had left. Estimates of who remained range from 30,000 to 80,000, a fraction of the peak attendance. Hendrix played for 2 hours with a large ensemble he called Gypsy Sun and Rainbows. The performance that has endured from that set, and arguably from the entire festival, was his solo guitar rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, a performance without vocals or accompaniment, using feedback, the tremolo arm of his Stratocaster, and controlled distortion to move through the national anthem in a way that sounded like a document of the year America was living through. Vietnam was in every note of it. The recording has been analysed by musicians, historians and cultural critics ever since as one of the most significant single performances in the history of American popular music. The festival ended, the crowd dispersed, the field was left covered in debris, tents, sleeping bags, food wrappers, and the physical evidence of 400,000 people having occupied a dairy farm for 4 days. Max Yasgur, who addressed the crowd from the stage during the weekend and received one of the most sustained ovations of the entire event, continued farming until his death in 1973. His neighbors never entirely forgave him. The mythology of Woodstock was not created by the event itself, it was created by the film. Director Michael Wadley and a crew of over 100 camera operators filmed the festival across all 4 days. The resulting documentary, released in 1970, ran for nearly 4 hours and was constructed with technical sophistication, including split screens, extended musical sequences, and uncut performance footage, which gave audiences who had not been there a version of the experience that was, in some ways, more coherent and more emotionally complete than what the 400,000 attendees had actually lived through. Mud and food shortages do not define the film's version of Woodstock. What makes it is the music, the faces in the crowd, and the sense of a generation occupying a space together and briefly making it work. The film won the Academy Award for Best Documentary in 1971. It was seen by millions of people who then understood themselves to have witnessed something, even though they had watched it in a cinema. The event and the film became inseparable in the cultural memory, and the mythology grew from that combination rather than from either one alone. 4 months after Woodstock, the Rolling Stones played a free concert at the Altamont Speedway in California. The Hells Angels were hired as security. A member of the crowd was stabbed to death in front of the stage while the Stones played. 3 other people died. The film of that concert, Gimme Shelter, released the following year, served as Woodstock's dark mirror, and the 2 events together have been used ever since to bracket the end of the 1960s as a cultural moment, the brief opening and rapid closing of something that had seemed, for 3 days on a farm in New York, genuinely possible. What Woodstock actually was, stripped of 50 years of retrospective meaning, was a logistical near-disaster that worked because the people who attended it decided collectively that it would. The infrastructure failed, the planning was inadequate, the site was secured a month before the event, and 400,000 people showed up, fed each other, shared what they had, listened to the best musicians of their generation, and went home without serious violence. That outcome was not guaranteed and was not produced by the organizers. It was produced by the crowd. That is the part of the story that tends to get lost in the mythology, and it is the part that most clearly explains why the event has remained significant for more than half a century.